Hey, welcome. Now, today we're going to discuss what's the difference between JavaScript and jQuery. This is one of the most commonly asked questions. What is the quite major difference between jQuery and how is it different from JavaScript? So let's talk about this, that what is JavaScript and what is jQuery and how they differ and are similar to each other. This is Dr. Ishan Badi. This is the channel Learn with W3 Schools. If you're here for the first time, please do subscribe. Your subscriptions means a lot. Do support us. Leave your comment and what you like and dislike about the videos or what else you want to learn. So I'm going to use W3 Schools website to give you the difference between what's JavaScript versus jQuery. Okay, so let's begin. Now, JavaScript and jQuery. So, jQuery was created in 2016 by John Resing. Okay, it was designed to handle browser incapabilities and to simplify the HTML DOM manipulation. Now, we all know that JavaScript is primarily used for HTML DOM manipulation a lot, and it has some issues and some problems with that. So, jQuery was primarily invented to do that, to ensure that we are able to handle the DOM manipulation easily, event handling much efficiently, provide some very cool animation, and integrate very nicely with Ajax. So these were its three main primary purpose initially. So for more than 10 years, jQuery has been the most popular JavaScript library in the world. However, after JavaScript version 5 around 2009, most jQuery utilities can be solved with a few lines of standard JavaScript. So JavaScript has caught up to it and has resolved many of the issues, and you can use it with JavaScript as well, avoiding jQuery. So that's where the difference actually comes into play. You have to understand that what things are actually done by JavaScript and what are done actually by jQuery. So let's explore these things in more detail. So for example, the first example we do is finding HTML element by ID. This is one of the most commonly used JavaScript notation, and we use it so commonly and so regularly that we need to, we'll think that this is always the case. So if in JavaScript case, we use the document object get element by ID, and we provided some ID, which again is a hashtag provided in, or a simple ID provided inside the HTML tag. Okay, so this is standard way of doing it. However, in jQuery, you can simply write my element, which is again the variable that's used here as well, is equals to $ inverted quotations hash ID. That's all. So it sees how simplified it does. So it's what it's doing is it's trying to find out that go inside the $. This is actually referring to, in other words, this whole statement. So instead of this whole statement, this has been replaced with just $, brackets, and then again the hash. Do note the hash is there, and we use ID. Okay, this can be any ID that you provide in your HTML tag. So using this, you can very easily access your HTML element instead of using this whole one big line of chunk. But again, as I said, this is one of the most commonly used examples we see around the internet, especially whenever we're talking about JavaScript purely and printing data on this console. But if you are using jQuery, you can very easily do it like this. So that's the one major first difference that we have in mind. So next is finding HTML element by tag name. Now, finding HTML element by tag name again is quite important. Instead of using an ID, we have been using tag name as well. So if you are using HTML to find a specific tag name using element by tag name function, you can do that same with again the same $ and then the tag name without any hash. So notice now there is no hash here. It's just using the tag name. So by simply specifying the tag name, which can be my paragraph tag or any other tag for that matter, we can very easily find that tag by simply using the $ here. That's it. Whereas if you're still using the standard JavaScript, you will notice that we use document.get element by tag name, and we provide the tag name. So this is a standard JavaScript, whereas this is what we call jQuery. Okay, now whichever you like, let me know in the comments which method you prefer and which you have been using most commonly. I bet the answer would be this one, right? We have been using it this one. So but this is where jQuery takes an edge. It simplifies many things within our JavaScript. Now let's talk about class name. Similar to ID and tag name, you can use same mechanism to find the class name as well. So we have something called document. We have a document.get element by class name. So instead of tag name or ID, we use a class name, and then we provide a class name there. This again depends that if the tag has p class is equals to, for example, intro. So if my class has this code, that means I'm looking for a class intro. So it will go and search this thing out, and this is a standard JavaScript that we have been doing. However, the same thing can be done in jQuery using again the same $. So instead of using document.get element by ID class name, we use the same $. Nothing changes there. The only difference is the argument. Now we use this dot here. notice the simple dot. So this dot basically is specifying what exactly we want to do. So this dot, if you focus into it, is the key thing here. This dot allows us to define that, hey, this is a class. Okay, remember, if you use hash, it basically means ID, and if you don't use anything, you just use p, this basically means you're directly for searching for a tag, all using the same dollar sign. So using the same dollar sign, you can search for a class with this dot. With, if you use hash, it basically means you're looking for an ID. If you just provide the tag name without any prefix, it basically means, again, hey, you're using the tag name using the same dollar sign. So jQuery makes these things very simplified and very easy to work with. However, if you're using JavaScript, you need to remember these function names. So for our class name, we use class name method. Okay, but if you are using, for example, uh, tag, you provide the tag name method. If you are using, for example, ID, you use the ID method. So depending on what you are using, we provide these functions within JavaScript. But in jQuery, dollar sign, dot p, hash p, or just p should work fine. Okay, now same goes with the CSS as well. So if you are using, if you want to search and change a certain part of a CSS, again, in JavaScript, we used to have this thing, document query selector all. So we used to use this query selector method all, that allowed us to select paragraph dot intro, means we are selecting an intro class name. So this intro is typically a class, and then this p basically is a tag, and it says, hey, inside the paragraph tag there's a class intro, and then you can change the CSS for that. However, if you're doing in the jQuery, again, exactly same thing. We use the paragraph, notice the dot, because we used the dot again previously, and we have a class name. So this becomes our class name, and this becomes our tag, and we use that with, again, same dollar sign here. This is how we do, this is how we use in jQuery, simply as that. The beautiful thing here is that all of these syntax use the same dollar, and the only thing differentiating is the argument itself. So since you are using CSS, you must be using a class name in CSS typically, so we use paragraph dot intro. If you are using JavaScript, for all four approaches, you actually have to remember four different methods. For CSS, it's query selector all. For tag name, it's get element by tag name and class name, and so on and so forth. But with jQuery, because it tries to simplify many things, you only use the same dollar sign. The same dollar sign is used, and then you just differ with respect to arguments. That's how things are working, and that's how it makes it more simplified. So this is the primary difference between jQuery and JavaScript selectors. Okay, let's go further and understand how jQuery and HTML elements actually are working together. So jQuery versus JavaScript. jQuery was created in 2006 by John Rezick. It was designed to handle browser incapabilities. Okay, so again, the same definition, blah 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 things. Let's talk about the major text content. So for example, if you have a text content and you want to change the text content of any HTML element using a standard JavaScript, this is what we used to do. So we used to go for my element. Remember, we already had, if you have already done document.get element by ID, and we provided it an element in the previous selector. So once we have an element, we go dot text content is equals to hello Sweden. Whereas in jQuery, we just go my element dot text hello Sweden. So we just use a method called dot text, whereas in JavaScript, we have this thing text content as well. So we need to provide it, hey, text content is equals to Sweden. Okay, so this behaved like a subclass, a sub object, and we said my element dot text content is going to be Sweden hello. So this would change the content. Let's view the examples to understand these things a little bit more in detail. So if you go inside the examples, you will find that this is now this is what it's trying to do. So we have a standard HTML setting my text. We have ID 01, ID 02, hello world, hello Sweden, two paragraph containing two IDs. Using a standard JavaScript, we use document got element by ID. Find me the 01 ID, so 01 is there, and then whatever is the element is actually returned and saved inside my element. Okay, then we use the same my element here, and we say, hey, go inside it, there's a text content inside this element, change it to hello Sweden, hence both output print as hello Sweden. So this is how it simply typically works within the JavaScript notation. Whereas if you go and check out the jQuery notation for the same aspect, Now see how jQuery is working. So for jQuery, we are saying that I need to have first of all src jQuery header file. So every jQuery needs to have the header file, as we hope we know that. So once you include this header file, only then it will basically be understanding jQuery. So we have again heading tag, we again have our two paragraph tags, both contain the same IDs, and then a script tag, we go and we say, hey, $document.ready function, bracket start, bracket close, okay, and then we provided a variable element $01, and then we say my element dot text hello Sweden. This is how it's going to change. So this is the simple line that we use, again the dollar to fetch the element hash for an ID. So dollar hash basically will indicate that I want to fetch this element here. So this element will be saved inside this my element. Then we use my element in a function called dot text and change the string. This is how it simply works. And if you are here and not understanding how jQuery works, again I already have a detailed tutorial on jQuery. You can find it on my channel or in members page. Do look it around. But basically jQuery uses a header file that allows us to connect and use the jQuery library. Then for every jQuery, we use a $document object dot ready function. Means that we're telling it that our document needs to have this jQuery function inside these brackets, and then we provide the jQuery code. Okay, that's how, and that's why it differs from a standard JavaScript. For a standard JavaScript, we don't need to use any of this thing, but for jQuery, we need to provide that. So this is how basically changing the text content means. Let's move on further and see how we get the text content. So in order to get the text content, now we use again a similar approach. If you are using JavaScript in a standard older way, we used to use document get element by id dot text content. So this will retrieve the text content and save it inside this variable. However, with jQuery, we use my text as a variable. We use dollar hash, again same mechanism of HTML selector we already talked about, and we use a function called dot text. So what this is going to do is it's going to fetch the text inside this HTML tag and save it in this variable here. Okay, if you want to see the code, let's check out the code here. If I click on it, say the same. So every JavaScript or jQuery code specifically, if you are using jQuery, do make sure you always use this header file. Again, I've talked about this in detail in my jQuery tutorial. You can check that out on my channel. Then we have what we call our standard paragraph tags, each this time 3, each containing a separate ID. Then we go inside the script tag, we say, hey, $document, I'm accessing my current document. And inside the document, we use ready function, bracket start, bracket close, my text, $02, hash 02, sorry, under the dollar brackets, dot text. So this dot text will actually return the text and save it inside this variable. Then we can simply say $demo, go inside this demo tag and then change dot text. Okay, so we're going to apply this text to our whatever text we fetched inside this thing. So it's going to change the content based on what we are doing here. Okay, so this is how JavaScript works. So do note that every jQuery has this $sign, which is quite important, and we are using that for jQuery statements. So getting a text content is basically, again, becomes quite simple and easy if you're using jQuery. So now let's talk more about HTML content. Now, to set an HTML content similar to getting the text, we basically again use the similar structure. However, we use a function called .html. So if you're using JavaScript, you famously would be using inner HTML, right? So we use my element inner HTML. This allows us to fetch the inner HTML of any HTML content, and then we use any string that we want to put or any HTML tag inside that. However, if you are using jQuery, now instead of inner HTML, we use my element.html. This allows us to fetch the HTML content and then replace it with this string. So we use this function, in other words, jQuery function, that allows us to update the content, as contrary to our previous inner HTML. Or if you use set text uses this $sign. So in set text we use this $sign. However, if you go inside our set HTML, we use a function called .html. So this allows us to change the HTML content as we want to update it. Okay, well, then we use something called get HTML. Now get HTML allows us to fetch the HTML content as well using something called HTML function without any data in jQuery. Okay, so jQuery says that you use my element, that again has get element ID or whatever element method you're using, save it in my element, and then you use .html. .html function will actually return the text inside this particular element, and the will be assigned to this content area. Whereas previously in JavaScript, we use again the same inner HTML method. So basically, both get and set uses the same method. So get also uses set also uses .html function, but we provide an argument. And if you want to do get, we just without argument we provide it. And remember, when we do a get, that means we are fetching a data and the data will be returned. Hence, we need to provide that data and save it inside a variable here. Similarly, in JavaScript content, we use that. So if you check out the jQuery syntax of it, so in jQuery, again, we start with the standard HTML. We use the script tag that allows us to fetch the entire jQuery script, making sure this is very important. We provide that. Then we have h2 header. We have two div tags, a standard HTML code. So the example comes here. So for every JavaScript, we start with a $sign. We provide a document dot ready function. We provide that, hey, this document is supposed to be ready. Then inside here, we use something called variable content. We declare a variable. We use a $sign #2, again fetch the content from this ID here .html. So means whatever we have written inside this HTML will actually be returned to this function here. Okay, so this code here will basically be accessing through this jQuery. Once with this HTML content is fetched, it will be saved inside this content variable. So from here, it will actually be saved here. And then later on, you can use the previous method of setting the content, and you can use $#01.html content area. Okay, so this will change the content and update it accordingly. As simple as that. Okay, I hope you understand it. So this is how jQuery basically works. It becomes much more easy once you understand and start working with the functions. So getting a data allows us to very easily fetch the data and save it in the variable, and then you can use it to set it. So again, get, set, and get, both methods are basically used here to fetch and set the data. If you want to check out the same code for JavaScript, again, JavaScript uses similar syntax that we have been using multiple times. In other words, we have two div tags. We use constant document get element by id 02.innerHTML. Okay, this is the most common and frequently used content. What this will do is it will fetch the element id 2 here, get element by id, and then it will say, hey, get its inner HTML, which is actually this text. Then this text will actually be saved inside this variable here. So this content will now have that. Now to set this content back on our web page, we will use document.get element by id 01. So it's going to set the get this 01 id. We say, hey, dot inner HTML, go inside it in inner HTML and change the content to content area. So this becomes a standard JavaScript code that we have been using it, but using jQuery, things become a lot more simplified if you're using here. So jQuery again does the same thing. First, it fetches the content and then sets the content on 01 index. Okay. This is how we handle HTML content using jQuery. Now, next, let's talk about CSS. In similar way, JavaScript and CSS also work efficiently, but when you add jQuery to it, well, jQuery has a specific mechanism to handle those queries. So now let's talk more about JavaScript, jQuery, CSS style. So how does JavaScript allows us to handle CSS? Okay, well, as you might have already understood, if you're using jQuery, things are much more simpler than JavaScript, and then it also has a similar functions. So if I say hiding HTML element, if I need to hide an HTML element using JavaScript, standard wise, we used to have my element, again fetching the content ID or tag name or a class name. Then we go into .style, .display is equals to none. So again, style basically means we are using CSS, and then this is a CSS property called display. We set it to none. Okay, this will change the display of this particular component to none, meaning it will hide that particular component. However, using jQuery, it becomes extremely simple. We just call a function called hide. What this will do, it will hide the component. This is how easy it gets if you're working with jQuery and CSS. Okay, similarly, let's just check out the code. So if you look at the code, basically, again, it has the same thing. We use our standard HTML boilerplate code. We have a script. It contains, again, link to our jQuery file. We have a heading. We have 3 HTML tags. Okay. Now, in order to change it, we will go inside the demo tag. So what we do is we use the script tag. Inside the script tag, we write the standard jQuery function. We say $#02. So basically, we want to change this hello Sweden, and we want to say .hide. What this will mean that we have hidden this particular content and now it's no longer displayed. Hence, we only get world in Japan being displayed. So we find the ID and then we hide it. That's it. Okay. So $#20 hide. This will basically hide the component. Makes much more sense, becomes much more easier if you are using jQuery In JavaScript, again, the convention is we find style.display and then we change it. Okay, showing HTML elements. Similarly, vice versa, in order to show the HTML contents, you use .show method. Okay, in jQuery we provide .show method, whereas in JavaScript, again similar way, we use style .display and then we change display to this, or usually we change it to block, or for example inline, depending on what tag you are using. So both would basically enable and show the content as well. In this case, we are just removing the comment, meaning we are changing from hide to none, which is actually from none to no value, which by default will mean that it's going to show us the block. Okay, so depending on what tag you're using, you can use block, inline block, or other thing. If you want to learn more about CSS and display properties, I have a complete tutorial on my channel. Check it out. It's 5 hours long, discusses every single thing about CSS. It's complete course, okay, using again W3 Schools. So do check it out. Now, so this is how basically we show. Similarly, if you want to show the styling attributes, changing the font size, for example, or any other thing with the CSS, this is how we do it. So it's not only applied to this HTML styling, but any other style that you want to change using CSS with jQuery, what you do is, again, we use the hash sign, dollar sign, because again jQuery uses the dollar sign. We provided the demo, which is again the tag that we want to add it based on the ID. So again, hash represents the ID we want to edit, demo becomes the ID name. Then we use a function called .css. So to change any other CSS, we call a function called .css, bracket stored, and then we provide the property and its value. So similar to CSS, as we know that CSS using property and value. So to change it, in jQuery, actually, we use the syntax that we provide a property inside double quotation marks here. This becomes our property of CSS. And then at the same time, this within after the comma, again, inside the inverted quotations, we use our value. Okay. So a typical CSS syntax would follow that we use something called property colon value, right? So in a normal CSS, we would write, for example, font dash size colon 35 pixels. So this is a standard CSS as it goes. But because we are using with jQuery, the jQuery uses font inside inverted quotations, comma, and then the second argument becomes its value. Okay. If you're doing the same thing with JavaScript though, JavaScript again goes, we document.get element by ID, or you can save the ID in an element variable, however you want to use it. Again, we're going to use the style a sub object inside the JavaScript, and then we're going to say font size, which is actually the font size here, or any other CSS property here. So this time here it becomes our property. So this is our property, and you can apply any other property for that matter. For example, color, background, display, anything you want to change, you basically provide a property name in this place. Okay, so any property you want to do, and then its value comes here. So the value actually comes here. So this is a standard JavaScript, the way we do it. And jQuery allows us to make it more simplified and more easier to understand for the browsers, and more efficiently it works. Okay, so this is how we update our HTML CSS styling using JavaScript and or jQuery. So it depends on how you do it. If you want to learn more of whichever is the best, basically you have to understand yourself. Primarily, many pure JavaScript developers still prefer to use JavaScript way, but jQuery, as you can see, simplifies many things, and things are much more understandable rather than going into a multiple chain of document.get element by ID, .style, .font size, whereas this actually makes much more sense if you follow along. Okay, next, let's finally talk about something called JavaScript DOM, document object model. Now, JavaScript document object model is quite famous. It controls the whole object, a whole document in form of an object. Using the same thing with jQuery again becomes quite easy and quite simple. So to remove any element using jQuery, we again use the same structure. We use our dollar sign, and then we say, hey, dollar sign dollar hash ID 01, again the element ID, and then we use dot remove method. Just like dot show and hide methods, we have a remove method that will actually completely remove the element from our page. Again, hide will just hide the element and leave the space there, whereas remove will actually remove the whole element. To remove the same thing using JavaScript, we used to have document.getElement by ID, find the element that has an ID, and JavaScript also uses a remove method. So here you see the similarity is almost there. They both use the same method to hide a certain element using JavaScript. Okay. At the same time, if you want to find a parent of any element, okay, to find a parent of the current element, you in JavaScript previously we used to have this structure. We used to have a declared a variable. We say, hey, document, find me an element called 02 by an ID this thing, then dot parent node dot node name. So we want to say go inside the parent node and find its dot node name. This would allow us to find the parent of my node. So for example, if you have a parent tag and then it has another child tag inside it, so this becomes my parent, this becomes my child. So it will allow us to find that, hey, what is the parent of this tag? Similarly, you can do this much easier in jQuery, again using hash 02. We say, hey, find me dot parent, we call a function parent, and then we find the prop node name. Okay, so whatever node we want to find out, we basically use this using these two functions. So we say inside this element there's a parent function, call the parent function, using the parent function then we call the prop function, which will return the child node to us. And because it's going to return the child node, this whole string will return a value which is going to be saved here. Similarly, this whole string is going to return a value that's going to be saved in this thing. Let's see this in action to understand how this thing is working. So if you open up the code, you will find that again inside here we have a standard JavaScript code that allows us to, jQuery code. In this case, we have a script tag, document function, ready function. We say, hey, $demo, find me a demo, dot text 01. So find me a dot text $01 dot parent prop node name. Okay, so we want to change the text of this demo to the parent node of my content. Okay, so we say $02, go inside $02, this one, dot parent, find me its parent dot prop name node name. So the whatever is the name of the node, return that node name and then print that as a text to me. Okay, and that text will basically mean that we are setting the text on this demo value. So this parent is going to return this node name will actually be in this node name here, and then based on this it will return the body node. So remember, we have a body node as the parent of a paragraph, hence this will return the body, and we're going to change this into a text, or we're going to use this as a text and print it here. Okay, meaning that, remember, we have already talked about the text method setting the text using our jQuery. So this is setting the text. So we have a one bracket here and we have a one bracket here. Inside this we again use $02, which means that inside this we are again writing another jQuery. So inside the text we want to print some text here. What text it goes? It says, hey, $02 dot parent, go inside this 02, find me its parent dot prop name node name. So this prop name would be basically the node name that we provide here. So return this node name to me and then print that node name using the text method on our screen. So we get body printed. Okay, and then if you want to do the same thing with JavaScript, basically we have document.getElementById by id dot parent name dot node name. So this is how we can access any or standard JavaScript and jQuery DOM models or DOM objects within our thing. There are many other things that we can do with jQuery. As I said, I already have a complete tutorial on jQuery that uses this entire W3 Schools website to explain all major concepts of jQuery that are used inside with our JavaScript and in our HTML web programming coding. So if you want to learn more about jQuery and how they're working, from syntax to basics to effects to all these major concepts, don't forget to subscribe this channel, follow along, and hit that bell icon so you can receive the notifications when I upload this video, which already is in making. You might be available in the members special membership channel page. Okay, anyway, so I hope you understand the basic differences. This is quite easy and quite clear, quite simple. What are the major differences with the JavaScript and jQuery? We're going to talk more about this in future coming videos. So see you around. This is Dr. Zishan signing off.